Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar. My name is John Paget. I'm a senior partner here at Open Velocity, and today I am joined by my colleagues Bethan Vincent and Lisa Wood. Now, before I forget, we've also got our colleague Des manning the chat on the webinar. So if there are any questions that pop up, please do pop them in there. We can't promise that we're going to get to them today, but any questions that we do get, we will endeavour to follow up with afterwards. So in terms of today's topic, we need to go back to the start of this year when we were reflecting on the questions that we've been having from a number of our clients. They tend to fall into two camps, either startups that are looking to put marketing capabilities into their business, or scale-ups who may already have marketing capability but are looking to scale and grow and drive efficiency. And that led to a lot of similar questions that we were hearing and that we were engaging with those clients. And that was around, how can I find more of my ideal customer? And what kind of marketing capability do I need to build into my business to hit my targets in the next 3, 4, 5 years, in order to be able to hit my revenue targets or my growth goals? Or what team do I need to hire to be able to make sure that that happens? And this was set in a context of a lot of disruption within the marketplace and within marketing specifically. And when we were thinking about a marketing trends report, pulling all of these things together, we realized we need to cast our gaze a little bit beyond 2023 and 2024 and actually look at what's happening in the next 3 to 5 years. And so that's where we are today. So we wrote a report. It's got 5 trends within it. And at the end of this webinar, there'll be a link for you to be able to download the full report. You're going to hear from each of us today as we take you through 3 of those trends. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Bethan to take us through the first one.
Perfect. Thank you, John. So I'm going to be talking about how B2C behavior now significantly impacts the B2B marketing funnel, and how B2B marketing is having to evolve to closely mirror B2C strategy. So B2C is almost kind of setting best practice for B2B to follow. And there's this real kind of shift away from traditional models of lead generation, demand capture. And we'll go into that into a bit more detail. But in terms of kind of why this is happening, I think, well, with anything, there's a lot of kind of contributing factors, but the 2 I'd like to point out are, firstly, this old model that you saw in B2B sales of consultative selling, where the salesperson was the expert, the gatekeeper of information. You couldn't move forward in the process without speaking to them. That's kind of old school now. With consumers and buyers, they have access to the internet, so they come to deals, to the buying process armed with a lot of information. So sales is no longer the gatekeeper. Also, the workforce is changing. We're seeing massive demographic shifts. I think in the UK now, 50% of the workforce is made up of millennials. And as a geriatric millennial, I can tell you that I grew up with the internet. I consume all of my information online. And B, I don't like picking up the phone. And also, we've got 20% of the workforce is now made up of Gen Z. And obviously, as time evolves, those cohorts will grow. So I think another thing that's quite interesting is B2B buying journeys are becoming extremely complex and extremely long. And research from Gartner, and this is a Gartner chart here, kind of suggests that B2B marketing is becoming increasingly digital, or the B2B buying process. And when I talk about buying process, I'm not just talking about the kind of sales end of the funnel, I'm talking about the whole thing. And buyers no longer follow a linear funnel. There's this kind of misconception in marketing that buyers follow this really kind of super linear logical process. I'm not sure that was ever true, if I'm perfectly honest, and it's certainly not true now. And you can see from the kind of graph here that it shows there's multiple different touch points. People move in and out of different phases, and actually having to interface with multiple different stakeholders in the process as well. And this leads organizations to, if I'm honest, sometimes ignore the fact that buying in the category is really, really hard. The buyer has to navigate all of this stuff. And you get this kind of volume. The internet allows for access to a volume of information, which is incredibly helpful, but also buyers are kind of unsure of where is the right information for them and which information they can trust. And trust is a theme we'll touch on actually during this talk. And I think the key thing here is you're more likely to choose a brand you know and recognize. And this means building a relationship with the buyer, the stakeholders, before they enter into the buying process. And this is where you kind of get into the whole B2B needs to be thinking about brand awareness. It needs to be thinking about what we'd call a marketing kind of top of the funnel activities, but historically they haven't. And in fact, there was a really good article out this week, I think it's in Marketing Week, with some data from the LinkedIn team, where they said basically 8% of B2B marketers invest in brand traffic, which is a super interesting stat. And I think the challenge is B2B marketing is traditionally focused on people who are currently in market. So they're trying to kind of scoop up demand in the market. And that's where you get kind of focus on page channels, things like, paid search, where you're trying to filter for people searching for what you're selling. But the problem with just being present at that stage is it really leads to a commodity positioning, because if you haven't built up a relationship with that person, probably a lot of their decision at that point is going to be based on price, and price is one of the main levers you can pull. This leads to kind of slower growth. Essentially, you're giving away margin, and you also might find that it results in a higher customer acquisition cost and a lower win rate as well. And anyone who has spent a lot of time doing things like outbound sales, for example, which is brute force demand capture, I'd say, knows that leads you get from outbound, they are slower to close and less likely to close. And that you see the same with demand capture from a marketing perspective as well. So this means that B2B brands have to take a full funnel approach. And in terms of learning from best practices in B2C, is buyers want to self-service the information they get. And frankly, they don't want to speak to sales. And what you need to do is give information that helps customers move themselves towards that kind of end state of being in market. You have to enable them. And it's quite interesting, buyers, and I know this from experience working with clients, less and less buyers want to hit a button that says speak to sales for a demo. And I'm sure a lot of you listening have experienced this in your own interactions from a B2B perspective, where sometimes you just want to find out the price of something, or you just want to understand, what does a demo of the system actually look like? And again, you don't want to spend 30 minutes on a call with a salesperson who often isn't very actually interested in what you're doing. They're trying to hit quota. It's an experience that's really full of friction. And I think the key thing here is buyers want to be enabled. They don't want to be sold to. And they really favor self-service, transparent information on things like pricing, the option to try a product for free. And also they heavily rely on actually third-party reviews and testimonials. And this is an example from one of our clients called SinglePoint. They're a QMS platform. And recently we kind of introduced a whole third-party review process. So this isn't housed on their website, it's on a third-party website. And we've really found it a useful tool in enabling buyers to understand what other people's experiences of using the product are. And obviously kind of reviews and ratings are really helpful as well. And helpful at both at the kind of top brand awareness end of the marketing funnel, but also in the decision-making lower end of the funnel as well. And I think it's interesting here, people want to be treated as individuals, not company units. And this is something that B2B has often kind of fallen foul of, like we're selling into the department. And think about your experiences as a consumer from a B2C perspective. When you're consuming, you're buying on Amazon, you're on Netflix, that's a really personalized experience to you. And there's a whole lot of data and machine learning that allows them to personalize the experience to you. And that setting of standards sets your standards for how you want to experience the B2B buying process. So really, as a company and a B2B company, you don't want to be giving one process, one set of information for all of your customers in uniform. You do have to segment and you do have to personalize. And this actually involves knowing your customers and knowing what they want, what they need at certain points in time. And I think lots of companies, from our experience, do a lot of customer research in early phases and that kind of startup phase. But as they mature, they tend to lose their kind of eye and their focus on the customer a little bit. So, if you could take one thing from my section of this talk today, it's to go away and speak to your customers and run a structured customer research and feedback program in your business, and then actually do something with that. Because again, lots of companies run customer surveys, all of that kind of stuff, but they don't take any insight from it and they don't actually action anything off the back of it as well. And I just wanted to throw this slide in because I thought this was kind of interesting that, out of all the most effective channels that marketers are self-describing as most effective. So, hey, take that with a pinch of salt. But in B2B, it was actually in-person events. And I think this goes back to what I'm saying, that people want to be sold to as individuals. They want to have that human connection. And B2B marketing for a long time has been very impersonal. It's been very about capturing people in market. And really what you've got to be thinking is, how do we build a brand and build awareness with people before they're at that point of need? And events, video, thought leadership content, these are all channels through which you can do that as well. And finally, if you just focus on those in market, and this is a stat that's really bandied about from a lot of different angles, but in any given time in your market, only 5% of buyers, your total addressable kind of market, buyers in that market, are in market for your solution. And if you're just focusing on that 5%, you're reaching 5% of that market, and you're ignoring that 95% of people who are out of market. And these figures, you could argue, or maybe it's more 80-20 and whatever, but whatever the figure is, more people are out of market than in market in any given time. And what is B2C really good at? It's really good at brand building, and B2B needs to kind of latch onto that and start building that awareness and putting budget into that as well. So I've said my piece there. I will pass on to John.
Right, thanks, Bethan. Okay, so swiftly on to trend number 2 then. So digital advertising landscape will be forever changed. Okay, so we start this story with a UK industry that's worth 41 billion and hyper-targeted marketing. And it's all based off a few lines of code. So by this, I'm obviously meaning the UK advertising industry and third-party cookies. Now, I'm sure many are familiar with third-party cookies and what's happening. But third-party cookies are those bits of code that collect bits of information about us, but that are sadly passed from online pillar to online post, meaning that as users, we don't have much control over what data is collected about us and how that data is collected. Now, the inconvenient truth is that that third-party data has largely paid for the free internet over the last 25 plus years. And that's all about to change. And so marketers have a real headache now trying to understand and get hold of what's changing and what is coming down the track. Okay, so the third-party cookie is being killed off. And as we'll see, it's not quite as simple as that, but it is disappearing from view. But cookies themselves are still very much going to be around. And I'm going to come on to first and second-party cookies in a minute. But to confuse things further, we've got fragmented media. So over the last 10, 15 years, the numbers of places that we can spend our time online, the platforms that we can join, and the channels that we can occupy have grown exponentially. So there's a huge amount of media fragmentation. And when that comes to marketers understanding where their customers are and what they're doing online, it's made it far, far more difficult. At the same time, we've got, or if I can just ask you to go back, Bethan. At the same time, we've got data ethics and online privacy, which is confusing and making this far more difficult, as we're going to see on the next slide. So if we jump to the next slide. So the timeline of where we are now. So as I mentioned, these concerns about user privacy have not just emerged from 2017. This is a conversation that's been rumbling on for a lot longer, but it took to 2017 for one of the really big changes to happen. And Apple have been leading the way. They've wanted to be the ones to build a reputation about being user and data first. Google, in comparison, has dragged its feet. It first announced that third-party cookies were disappearing in 2019, and yet as we stand towards the end of 2023, we still haven't got there. And there are no guarantees that it's going to happen when Google says it's going to happen in 2024. And that might have something to do with the fact that Google have the biggest, most profitable third-party powered advertising model on the internet. And so there's a real dilemma that Google have been trying to sort out for the last nearly 4 years. In addition to that, we've got key pieces of legislation, such as GDPR, which I'm sure everybody is familiar with, that started to change the landscape, started to change the way that data can be managed, data can be stored, and the ways in which actually we as consumers are a bit more aware of our online data and our online privacy. Okay, so in summary, marketers' job has got far more difficult. Third-party cookies have been around for a long time. That's enabled to some degree, the democratization of digital marketing and digital advertising, but that's disappearing. And with the rise of fragmentation, the media fragmentation, there are more doors, more places for our target customers to be able to be spending their time and to be hiding. And this makes it far more difficult. It really stretches marketers' budgets, and it makes it far more difficult for us to drive, as marketers, two key things that we really care about when it comes to marketing campaigns: reach and frequency. So on to the solutions. So it's not new to discuss a race for first-party data. This has been around a little while now, from the time when we knew that third-party cookies were going to be disappearing. The key point I want to get across here is that there are real challenges to startups and to scale-ups because they're going to be at a disadvantage. Now, if we look at the graph here, these are the sources of first-party data sources. Now, imagine you're Google, or imagine that you're Apple. Customer purchase history, social media profiles, website registrations, CRM, loyalty programs. You're going to have millions and millions of records sat in each of those places. So the death of the third-party cookie, whilst still an issue, is far less of an issue than a startup or a scale-up, which simply doesn't have the numbers of customer purchases or social media profiles to be able to glean that information from. And so scale is really winning. So the message here is that startups and scale-ups have really got to think about first-party data strategies yesterday. This is something that needs to happen as soon as possible because these are not quick fixes to be able to put into place. Okay, and the point I want to make about this slide is, if we think about the marketing team of the last 20 years, the skills and capabilities have evolved, but it's largely been set. We think of copywriters and designers. You might have an SEO expert, social media expert, and a paid advertising expert. These skills have largely remained unchanged. And yet, if we cast our gaze into the future, that 3 to 5 and beyond year timeline that I was talking about at the beginning, actually, that disruption that I talked about is really going to impact the capabilities that a business is going to need and the setup and the nature of in-house marketing teams. Now, to run through some of those things, we've obviously got automation and the rise of AI. There's a lot of conversation about this. I'm not going to talk about it in depth here, but we're already using a lot of AI, and many of us on this call will be using tools that are powered by AI. But the way that that's going to shape the way that marketing teams work is ripe for disruption. So we can expect there to be a lot of change there. With the self-serve CRM, well, Bethan's already talked about this, and this is true in B2C just as much as it is to B2B, that desire to self-serve is speeding up, and that we want to be able to access and control what we use, when we use it, and how we use it. And so that is increasingly important and has implications for the technology that we adapt within the marketing function of the business. Data clean rooms. It's a technology that's been around a while, but that's going to become more accessible to more businesses. The idea that you can pull different sources of data together to be able to glean the same insights that you would want to get without contravening data legislation and data concerns. Retail media, again, another buzzword over the last year or two. This is where the big retailers are waking up to the fact that their digital assets, their websites, have become advertising networks and ad networks in their own right. Great for them, will drive lots of revenue, but for the individual brand that has products to sell, this is another opportunity to get close to the consumer at the bottom of the funnel. And so new marketing opportunities are opening up. And then I've left it to almost to last, partner marketing. This is where the second party cookie comes in. So this is critically important now, and I think it has never been more important now with the brands and businesses that you decide to partner with strategically. Second party cookies is the information that you can share with those companies and with those brands, done so on a more legitimate basis than third party cookies. And it's increasingly important because for startups and for scale-ups, this is an opportunity that lets them fight back against the dominance of first-party cookie challenges that I was talking about on the previous slide. So the strategic conversations happening in brands right now should be, who can we partner with to be able to reach more of our audience? So it's not competing businesses, but businesses that share the same kind of audience that you are trying to target. And I really added contextual marketing here as a throwaway. It's always last on the list, right? It's the ultimate backup. If third-party cookie marketing disappears and we don't have a better solution, we'll just go back to sticking travel ads on travel websites and food ads on food websites. So with that, that's trend number 2 covered. I'm going to pass over to Lisa.
So trend number 3 is trust. And you're probably thinking, trust's been around for ages. We've known trust is a thing that we need to nurture. But I think it's getting more prominent. So I think as consumers, we absolutely know trust matters. Most people tend to have a preferred set of go-to brands. And that is because we like them, we buy from them, ultimately, probably because we trust them. I think companies have definitely been taking a much more active approach to managing their reputation. They know that reputation has to be managed, because if you break trust, that's an important link with your consumers. And now I think the reason why we've said it's entering boardroom discussions is that I think at last, you've got this real strong link that is resonating in the boardrooms, that trust is actually fundamental to driving company growth. And therefore, you've got this prominence of people talking about it. It is becoming much more important. And I think the interesting thing is that when you're a smaller business, I think what we see when we talk to our clients is trust isn't always on the radar. They know it's important, but actually they're so busy building their business, getting new customers through the door, that trust hasn't quite got there yet in terms of being a key thing that they have to manage. And so this is really raising that in importance to say, you really need to be thinking about that from the get-go. So don't worry about the array of figures and graphs on this slide. This is really just about proving a point that we are living in an age of distrust. And I always follow this is data from the Edelman Trust Barometer in 2022. But it's a great barometer for kind of how consumers and people are thinking about, trust in business in the sort of wider society. So it's a great source of data if you've not come across it before. But I think the key things to take out here are, you have got an ever increasing decline in trust in government and media. So they are now seeing, they used to be very trusted sources, they're now seen as very divisive, and people are highly skeptical about what it is they're saying. You are seeing people increasingly concerned about fake news, and that's the rise and advent of AI is only going to increase that, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. You have got consumers, employees and investors all looking either to invest in, to work with or buy from brands and businesses that have positive values and beliefs. And businesses are being viewed as playing a really positive role in shaping a better future. So if you take that as context for trust, the business community has a real opportunity to step into those shoes and really do play, or can play, that very active role in shaping a better future, which is what ultimately attracts customers and buyers and makes them actually hugely loyal as well. Next slide. So why does trust matter? We are entering what is widely billed as the fourth industrial revolution. We've got a rise of machine learning. We're seeing AI and increased reliance on technology, and that actually leads to mistrust. You're already seeing it. The debate about AI, although it has settled down a little bit, but people are hugely wondering about where that's going to take us, whether to trust it, whether not to trust it. And as that starts to play a much more active role in our lives, more personal data is being used by machines, businesses to improve our experiences, you've got a whole sort of trust debate going on around whether or not you can trust brands and businesses. Consumers, I think, will just turn to their trusted set of brands, people that they really know and like and trust. And businesses are going, to John's point, they're going to have more of a reliance on data to fuel their growth. But if consumers are going to hand over their data, they have to trust an organization. You will not give your details and your personal data to people that you do not trust. So trust becomes a cogwheel in that sort of ever-increasing fight for growth as well. And I've just put a few, sorry, Bethan, if you go back, just a couple of quotes on there about, the role that, where we are in terms of sort of that new chapter in human development and technology. And then, Salesforce have a huge amount of data when it comes to customer engagement. And they say, trust is one of the key levers in terms of customer engagement. Okay, we'll move on. And I think, a really compelling chart is that you can actually prove that trust is driving growth for businesses. So investing in trust has a return. It's not just an ethereal thing that you think is a good thing for your business. There are now quite a lot of case studies and data that back up that those companies that invest in trust, this is some APA data, and that is showing that for a like-for-like investment in advertising, if you've got a brand, if you're investing that in a brand that has a higher trust, you will get a higher return on the back of it than a lower trust competitor. So there are compelling arguments now, which goes back to the boardroom piece, that invest in trust, drive the metrics of trust within your business, and it will give you longevity, loyalty, and growth for the long term. So I guess the key question next is, how do you build trust? What are the key factors of building trust in your business? So I think the first one is you have to invest in the quality of your product. If people say to you, who's quality? Which brands do you go to when you say a quality product? And invariably, the brands for me that spring to mind are, John Lewis, Apple, good quality products. And they are brands that are completely trusted, not completely, but they are trusted more than others, I think, by consumers. So invest in the quality of product, because the quality of your product is a pseudo for trust. Next, understand your customers. Be customer-led as an organisation. Do you know what they want? Do you know what problems and issues that you need to solve for them? Deliver for those customers. And do you know from personal experience, I'm sure, that if a company solves a problem for you, you'll trust them more, you'll go back to them again. So being customer-led and solving their problems and thinking through what they want is a key driver of trust. Be transparent in your interactions. We all know, again, personal experience, when a brand or a company says to you, sorry, I can't do that, computer won't let me, or you hide behind a rule book or a process, it is just annoying and it just gets you back up. So be as transparent as you can be in your interactions with your customers. Uphold standards. set yourself standards and uphold them. Really important. So you can do that in the contracts that you have with third-party suppliers, or people that have an interest in your or delivering for your company. Set those contractual terms. Ensure that your data handling is absolutely robust. When it comes to ad placement, media buying, manage your brand safety, and set customer service standards. And uphold those standards and have them as KPIs in your business, so that you're performing against them. And then the final one in here is create a culture that represents your brand. Open and inclusive environments that are built on respect, support, honesty, ethics. These can be a guide to your decision making within your organization. And that matters because that does filter back out through to your customers. So those are the kind of key things I would say. Concentrate on those and you'll help build brand trust. And then just a final thought for us to end on is you do have a duty of care to your customers. And when making decisions, remember, and this is an easy one to forget, but trust is incredibly hard to earn. It takes a long time. You have to earn it, but it's incredibly easy to lose as well. So you have to work hard, and that's why trust needs to be up there in centre, I think, in terms of being managed through any organisation. And that's the third trend.
Great, thanks very much, Lisa. Okay, so we were talking at the beginning of this webinar as to how long it would take, and we've flown through half an hour and at risk of overrunning. I want to take you just through a minute or so about what we do. Then I'm going to get to the QR code where you'll be able to download the full report if you're interested in reading a little bit more about what we think of what is coming down the track. So yeah, what unites, I guess, us at Open Velocity is our background of working in these businesses. Now, whether that's as marketing directors, as CMOs, or as founders. And I guess we know what it's like. We've been there, and there are lots of things that can get in the way of setting the right strategy and being able to put the right capabilities in place for business, whether that's 1001 things that you have to do that day, competing strategic priorities, or a whole world of other things. Sometimes it's just having an external perspective, and that's really what we try to bring. Next slide, Bethan, please. And we do that really through two different ways. So we can work with our clients on what we call marketing solutions. That is, how do we answer specific questions that our clients have? So how do we better go to market? How do we find more of our ideal customers? Is our core proposition really working for us? Alternatively, we can be at the end of a phone call or at the end of a Zoom call and just be there if there are questions that need to be asked, or maybe meetings that we need to join, being there as a sounding board. And those are the fundamental ways in which we are helping our clients. So last slide then, please, Bethan. So if any of that has sparked interest in a conversation with us, obviously, please do get in touch. We've got our email address and our website. We've actually just launched our .com, so you can visit either. Scanning that QR code is going to take you through to the full report directly. If you don't get a chance or it doesn't work for any reason, if you head to openvelocity.co.uk or .com and go to the Food for Thought tab, you'll find all of the thinking that we've done over the last, forever. There's lots of content in there, blogs, webinars, and this report. And one last final thing to say is that if you want to stay in touch with us, find out what's going on and where else we might be talking, please do find us on LinkedIn, because it's often the best place to find out about upcoming events and talks that we are doing. Otherwise, it's been a great privilege to be part of Leeds Digital Festival. And I want to thank everybody that stayed on to the very end. And I want to also thank my colleagues, Bethan and Lisa. So we hope to see you all soon at a future event. Thanks very much, everyone.
Bye.